I feel like we just cannot catch a break here. The Pixel 10 has just leaked again for probably the 5th time in the past 30 days. It feels like less than a week ago, I was talking about a suspiciously convenient leaked commercial filming, and now we're apparently seeing the device itself in the flesh with some actual tangible changes that we can talk about. We're seeing design tweaks, we saw internal specs, and we even got to hear some of the revamped ringtones that are coming, plus a potential launch date. The pace at which these leaks are coming out is absolutely insane, and I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get right into it. And guys, we're going to keep covering everything we can about the Pixel 10, so if you want some fun content to stay up to date, consider subscribing to the 9to5 Google YouTube channel, because I have a feeling we will have so much more to talk about as the months go on, and I really don't want you guys to miss out on any of it. Right off the bat, probably one of the biggest pieces of Pixel 10 news is that we saw actual close-up images of a leaked hardware prototype for what seems to be the Pixel 10 Pro. And unlike the last leak I talked about, there are some actual tangible differences between this and the current Pixel 9. Now, keep in mind, this is a DVT model, or a design verification test prototype, so I cannot stress enough, this may very well not be final hardware by any means, so take these changes with a grain of salt. Regardless, there are a small handful of physical differences we should talk about. One is the camera bar visor. It does have the same general design, but the cover glass appears to extend way closer to the edge, leaving just a tiny sliver of metal around the perimeter. And also, maybe I'm crazy, but the camera bar visor seems thicker than what we have on the Pixel 9 today, which is strange, no doubt. From what I remember about the Pixel 10 camera leaks, the Pixel 10 Pro and 10 Pro XL have the same exact setup as last year, so I'm unsure if this change is purely visual to differentiate the Pixel 9 and 10 series, or if there is some kind of tangible benefit. Maybe they're shifting around the internal components a bit for thermal management, or it could be an upgrade to the structural integrity perhaps. We really won't know until we get our hands on these devices. Another change here is at the bottom of the phone, as the USB-C port is now flanked by 2 identical cutouts. It does look like a dual speaker setup on initial impression, but realistically this is more so one cutout for the speaker and another for the microphone, with the change being made more for aesthetic symmetry at best. Because of this change, the SIM card tray has been moved to the top of the phone instead, where the antenna cutout currently sits on the Pixel 9 series. It's definitely a weird placement for sure, and I can't remember the last phone that had a SIM card tray on the top. I think that is very uncommon, but they might have done this for internal space optimization. Maybe the port doubles as an antenna cutout, or maybe they know most people will use a case, so having a cleaner bottom portion of the phone is more worth it to them, at least from a design perspective. And finally, the last major design difference is the prototype pattern on the back that Google typically uses to identify them. Obviously, this won't make it to any final builds, but it's always fascinated me, and I hope that I can get my hands on one of these models at some point, because as a phone nerd, I think this is just a really cool collector's item at the very least. Another major aspect of this leak that we did get are some of the internal specs, which do tell us quite a bit about what to expect. From what we see, the device is running an app of some kind that gives us deeper insight into some of the specs. We see it's running the Tensor G5, of course, with the core configuration being 2 8-Tex A520 cores, 3 Cortex A725 cores, another set of Cortex A725 cores, and 1 Cortex X4. But weirdly enough, the leak does show the chip is running on a 5nm process as opposed to the 3nm process that we're fully expecting. According to Mystic Leaks, however, this seems like this may be incorrect information. This could be a placeholder, or maybe this device has an early version of the Tensor G5 for testing purposes. No one really knows at this point, considering the nature of this leak. Regardless, we also see the rest of the internal specs, like 16 gigs of RAM, which is typical for a Pro model Pixel device, and 256 gigs of storage instead of the 128 gigs like the base model Pixels typically have. So either this is a higher end model, or maybe, and hopefully please Google, they are defaulting to 256 gigs as the base storage. Personally, I'm tampering my expectations, and I'm gonna say I doubt it. Google's been holding on to the 128 gig base storage model for quite some time now, but if they do make this change, I have nothing good to say about this, because 256 gigs seems like the perfect sweet spot these days. And last but not least, in regards to the specs, we see the modem is listed as the G5400i, which suggests we may have a Samsung modem rather than a MediaTek one that was previously rumored. I really hope that this is just a mistake or maybe a prototype placeholder. Historically, previous versions of the Samsung Exynos modems were pretty heavily criticized by many for having a weaker signal, slower data speeds, and less power efficiency, which did translate to noticeable battery drain, especially in older Pixel models. The rumored switch to MediaTek, I think, gave a lot of people hope for a more reliable, power-efficient modem, and unfortunately, this simply is something we'll have to wait and see how things play out, but I really hope that Google decides to go with MediaTek for the modem moving forward. We also got two pretty random but interesting device details for the upcoming Pixel 10 that you should at least be in the know about. One is a new set of system sounds that I mentioned earlier for the Pixel 10, and the other is the potential for a heavily upgraded camera stabilization system for video. Both are super interesting, but we'll start with the ringtones first. This was originally spotted on a YouTube channel named the Vikoski. If I'm saying that correctly, I do apologize. We heard new system sounds for the Pixel 10 through this YouTube video, including a new ringtone, notification chime, and alarm tone. We'll link the video down below, as I don't feel comfortable playing them in this video as they are unreleased, but I gave them a quick listen for myself and I described them as more upbeat versions of existing tones that we already have. They seem to be more lively and remixed to be a bit more fun, which is great in my book. I think with the upcoming Material 3 Expressive update, a refreshed sound design is much needed anyway. So this is a small but exciting detail. Of course, I fully expect this to come to older Pixel devices as well. I assume when the QPR stable update officially comes out, but early impressions are I really like them and I encourage you to give them a listen when you can, but do it after this video is over. And the second major Pixel 10 detail that we got recently is reports that we may see a heavily upgraded camera stabilization system. This information comes from Android Headlines and they describe it as, quote, being as good as a gimbal without needing the actual hardware. And apparently it will be available on the entire Pixel 10 lineup, from the base Pixel 10 to the 10 Pro to the 10 Pro Fold. Of course, without any actual footage, it's impossible to tell for ourselves if this is going to be a killer feature or not. Video boost in years past was truly awesome, but it did need the cloud, whereas this seems to be positioned as more of an on-device feature. And I will say, Pixel has sorely needed more features focused on improving video for quite a while now, so to potentially get professional level smoothness right from the camera itself would be a pretty strong selling point. Last but not least, the final Pixel 10 rumor that we have been hearing about is the potential release date. Also reported by Android Headlines, we're originally told the Made by Google event and by proxy the availability for pre-orders would be on August 13th, 2025. But then the next day, Android Headlines updated their statement to say the actual event day would be on August 20th, 2025, and shipping for these devices would start a week after on August 28th. This is a bit later than the Pixel 9s last year, as they were announced on August 13th, and shipping did start on the 22nd, which isn't really a huge deal. I'd say we're still in the typical launch window for the Pixel series, so I'm not really too worried about that. I'm more concerned if the Material 3 Expressive update will be ready with no compromises, because that gives Google about 3 to 4 months to perfect and polish everything up, but we'll just have to wait and see. So there you have it, my friends, another look at the Pixel 10 leaking at what feels like an unprecedented rate. It seems like every other day we're getting a new flood of information, from these detailed design tweaks and internal spec concerns to new system sounds and even a potential launch date window, plus much more. It's a ton of info to say the least, but definitely an exciting time if you're a Pixel fan curious about what Google has in store. With that said, what do you think of these leaks that we've talked about so far? Which details have caught your eyes the most? Are you intrigued by these subtle design changes, worried about the potential modem situation, or maybe excited for a handful of features that we've talked about over the past few weeks? Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, as I'm incredibly curious to hear what the Android community is thinking. Until next time, this has been Jordan Floyd from 9to5 Google. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.